You're still watching TVC Breakfast. We will now link up with Shomo Moimodu and Tijesu Adeoye in our Abuja studios for a conversation. Good morning. How is Abuja this morning?
Yeah, good morning, Etoma, and good morning, Ibrahim.
Good morning.
Good morning, Tijesu. Good morning.
Go ahead.
As you know, Abuja is quite hot. Okay, let's go on here. Let's go on with what we have for you today. Now, thanks for joining us on this segment of the program from Abuja. Now, a bill for an act to amend the Electoral Act to provide for early voting at elections, including criteria for eligibility, procedure at the elections, and for other related matters, has passed second reading on the floor of the Senate. The bill, sponsored by Senator representing Katsina Central, Abdulaziz Musa Yaradua, seeks to address the disenfranchisement of eligible voters who, by the nature of their jobs, are constrained from exercising their civic duty of casting their ballots during general elections.
Presenting his lead debate, Senator Yaradua listed INEC officials, including ad hoc staff, the security personnel, journalists, observers, and others who work on election day to uphold the integrity of the process, but are effectively denied their right to vote because they are deployed to polling units far from where they registered. Citing the last general election, the lawmaker concluded that over 1 million ad hoc staff who were actively engaged in election activities were disenfranchised. These figures are really surprising, but to help us put all of this into perspective, we have the mover of the bill in the Senate live with us in the studio. Thank you for joining us on the program today, Senator Abdulaziz Musa Yaradua. It's good to have you in our studio this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Nigerians.
Well, let's dissect your bill. You sponsored the bill titled the Electoral Act Amendment Early Voting Bill. This got an overwhelming support from your colleagues, but how far-reaching would this be in improving the declining voter turnout, which is currently at 27.1%?
Thank you very much. Just like you did mention, this bill seeks to enfranchise essential workers on election day. And in fact, the figure is quite staggering. It's almost close to 2 million Nigerians are effectively denied the opportunity to vote. So with this bill, it will help in reducing the pressure on election day, especially for those that this particular group of people that are denied this opportunity. And it will also increase the voter turnout. If you look at the statistics from 2015, the voter turnout was about 47%. To 2023, we are getting about 27.1%. This is quite alarming, where you have over 83 million eligible voters, and you are having these figures. So I believe with this early voting, it will help in ensuring that the voter turnout becomes much more bigger than it is today.
Okay. I think it's quite commendable because even I, as a journalist, I will benefit from this. Over the years I've covered the election, I've never been able to vote, so this is a good one. But beyond what this bill seeks to achieve, essential service workers will be able to vote, does this bill also considering the aspect of ensuring that it's not abused? The process is not abused, so that the sanctity of early voters, the ballots, are maintained. Does this bill also thinking about that?
Yes, the bill also has taken into consideration this, considering the fact that INEC has been improving in terms of its operations, from card reader to beavers, and today we are looking towards electronic voting. So we believe INEC has the expertise, to ensure that they bring out a framework that will ensure that the process is not abused. So I think INEC has that expertise to do that.
Okay. Now if I got you right, INEC has the expertise. But I think in the 2023 election, we came across a situation where I think it was explained that, there are certain provisions that didn't make the electronic transmission possible. Now, in this aspect, INEC has capacity to do this. Hope we won't get to that point, and INEC will say, because of certain provisions in the Constitution, we cannot practice that now, so we have to shelve it for a future date.
I don't think so. I'm in touch with the chairman of INEC, and he has given his full support for this bill. And I believe they are already working on the framework, and we'll get to them to see how we can collaborate to ensure that during the public hearing, if there are amendments within the framework of the bill, INEC comes up with such arrangements. And just to buttress your point, we were in South Africa last year during the elections, and INEC was represented there. So definitely they have seen how early voting, because in South Africa, they do practice early voting. So INEC would have learned lessons, from South Africa in terms of how early voting takes place. And it will surprise you to know that in South Africa, not only the election workers vote, you have the aged people, pregnant women, people with disability. In fact, they even go to the homes of their citizens, those who do not want to go to the, they don't want to go to the polling unit on election day. They go to their homes, to give them ballot papers, together with the with all the party officials, and they vote. In fact, we were in prison in South Africa. Even prisoners were allowed to vote. So we need to move forward. We call ourselves the giant of Africa. We should lead by example.
Well, don't you think that this may be overwhelming for the Electoral Commission that still grapples with challenges like poor logistics, technical glitches, and even inadequate staff, and it will also cost more money to conduct this kind of election? Well,
no matter the amount of money, you see, this is a constitutional requirement. Voting election is a constitutional requirement. Whatever amount of money required to ensure that that constitutional requirement is completed, the government has to provide such amount of money. So I don't think that is going to be a problem, because if the government does not provide the money, then there will be a constitutional crisis on that matter. So the issue of ad hoc staff, I think INEC has that expertise too. They've been using the members of the NYC, university lecturers, and so on and so forth. And so far, so good.
All right, we'll take this quick commercial break. We'll still continue the conversation, but that will be shortly after this break.
Life.
Thank you for staying with us. If you're just joining us, you're still watching TVC Breakfast, and we're live from Abuja studio. We're still speaking with the Senator Abdulaziz Musa Yaradua, who is the mover of the motion to amend the Electoral Act to allow for early voting. Now, let's talk about improving election security, which is a significant factor that can make or mar elections. Why does it seem that security agencies have been unable to protect the ballot, and election offenders are hardly persecuted?
Well, I think certain amendments are coming up in the Electoral Act. I'm a member of the Electoral Commission, the Committee on Electoral Matters in the National Assembly. We are coming up, God willing, with a lot of amendments, especially as it affects election offenders. We're thinking of a tribunal where that tribunal will be given the sole responsibility of dealing with such matters. And in terms of the security, well, me and you know that we don't have enough security in this country, considering you can see even from the insecurity that we are having. By the time you deploy them to the various polling units, they may not be enough. But most importantly, I think it's we, the politicians, we have to do the needful by ensuring that we do the right thing. Because most of the crises come from the politicians who want to win by, by all means necessary. So it is very important for, the participants, as the politicians, to ensure that they do the right thing. Okay. Because we are the ones who instigate, most of the youth to go and cause violence on election day.
Now, I hope we're not neglecting of the fact that we are in a financial constraint in Nigeria. I'm saying this in respect of our normal cycle of election. We have 2 stages of election. Now we're going to be introducing early voting. Is it not possible for Nigeria to have general election on one day? Do we have to have it at intervals? You have the early voting, then you have all the election for president, governors, lawmakers on the same day. Why split?
Well, we are thinking of that too. I believe there is a bill on that issue that is coming up in the National Assembly. We also believe it's quite possible, to hold election in one day so that you reduce the cost of logistics, the cost of financing the election itself. Because it's quite tedious, not only for INEC and the staff and the essential workers, it's also tedious for the politicians because you have to go back and start campaigning, for another round of election. Sure. So I think if we have all the elections in one day, it will help reduce, the financial burden on the government on that aspect, and also the logistics, burden on INEC itself.
Diaspora voting is also another matter that is on the front burner. I understand that there's a bill also in the House of Representatives that has scaled through second reading. Does your bill also capture that, clause for diaspora voting?
Not really, because I looked at the diaspora voting. There's a lot to be done. One, in terms of how they will vote over there. Because there has to be, to me, there has to be some collaboration between the government of that country and our embassy. So I think INEC will have to sit and find a way, the framework or mechanism in which our brothers and sisters out there, can be given that opportunity to vote. So I think with time, and if the bill passes, of course, INEC will have to sit and all hands will have to be on deck to ensure, that those in diaspora also are given that opportunity to vote.
Well, let's talk about a bigger issue, which is improving the efficiency in the electoral system. There are still unresolved electoral reform issues which continue to erode confidence and trust in the elections. Does the country need new electoral laws and guidelines, or is just about ensuring compliance with the existing laws?
Yeah, we still need amendments. At the same time, compliance is necessary. These are 2 issues. Because as you make the laws, you have to ensure you implement them. And in the process of implementation, obviously you could find, some hitches here and there. And that's why we are trying to amend. I will give you an example with the political parties. They are supposed to, during their congresses, they are supposed to make sure that they submit the list of their members to INEC during congresses. But that does not happen. The law is there. So what we are trying to do today is to amend the law to say, okay, if you don't submit the list to INEC, then your congress is not going to take place. INEC will not recognize anybody that is voted there. Same thing for the primary elections. So you see, this will force political parties to ensure that they submit the list of their members, participating in both congresses and primary elections, and as well as all the members of the political party, because it's important for INEC to have those data, to have the records, so that once a political party is going into primary elections or congresses, INEC has the list of those that are participating. So we are now amending the law to ensure that any party that does not submit such a list will be excluded, and they won't have candidates, on election day. So such laws have to be amended. So it is important from time to time, every election cycle, the Electoral Act is looked into based on the election that was conducted to see what are the areas that needs to be amended so that, we make it more efficient.
Well, as interesting as this bill is, we saw during the debate that there was one dissenting voice in the chamber, and that is Senator Titus Zam. He was opposing it and saying, given it could be compromised. Do you also think that this is an issue that should be considered?
Well, I think he did not understand initially what the bill was all about. He thought, he was thinking maybe those that are essential workers are not supposed to vote because he felt maybe there would be double, they are supposed to ensure the sanctity of the election. So they are supposed to be non-partisan, but that is not the case. The Constitution gives every Nigerian over the age of 18, the opportunity to cast his vote. So the fact that I'm an ad hoc worker does not mean I don't have somebody in mind to vote for. So he misunderstood the bill, and if you hear the debate, even the Senate President, the President of the Senate then, who presided, drew his attention to the fact that we are talking about those essential workers on election day. So he felt that, for example, INEC officials are not supposed to vote because they are not, that they should be impartial. But it is their constitutional right to vote. And impartial in the sense that how? If you go to the polling unit, there's no way any of the workers can influence, the results of the election because Nigerians are there to vote. So they also have their right to vote.
I want us to dwell on this other aspect. In the last election, we're supposed to have this electronic transmission. Now, is that aspect being dealt with now? That we're going to, I know after, during the election, results are uploaded, and also when it now comes to the aspect of the counting, sorting and the counting of the votes, does the present law, do you need an amendment to accommodate that aspect so that we don't just depend on manual? We don't resort back to manual, having done electronic transmission, then we just have that also, the online vetting of the votes.
Yes, we are working on that, on the electronic voting. But we cannot also discount, the manual, because if anything goes wrong, considering the situation in Nigeria today, for example, if you don't have light, how do you transmit the results? So you have to rely on the manual. So the manual will still be important, but what we hope to do is to ensure that the electronic voting takes place. So we are working on that.
Okay.
You also mentioned that you were in South Africa to monitor their last election. What are the important innovations besides early voting that you feel is worth considering in our own elections?
Yes, I think one of the innovations I think is worth considering is the fact that INEC will have to be more transparent, because what I saw there, the platform and software used by the electoral body in South Africa, they call upon political parties to come and inspect the software itself, the algorithm used in the software. So they call their computer experts to check, and that gives confidence and transparency to the system. So I think it's important for INEC to look into that, so that whatever platform they are using, let the political parties have the confidence by sending their own computer experts to check. Of course, thereafter, the algorithm can always be changed to ensure that, hacking does not take place. But that is one innovation that I saw, and I think is very important, because it will give more confidence, to political parties and to Nigerians as well.
Okay, let me just a bit go away from this amendment and order. You're a politician also. Ahead of the 2027 election, there's been a lot of alignment and realignment of political forces. Now, what are your thoughts on these movements up and down? And also, Nigerians will say that political parties seem not to have ideology. Everybody move from party A to party B and all that.
Well, yes, I'm a politician, but I think I would say it's not time for that. But, you know, in politics, everybody, you know, looks at what his interest is, and he pursues that interest. But as for me, we have work to do to ensure that we do what we are voted for, and when the time comes for politics, we put up, you know, a scoreboard for the voters to look at.
I'll bring you back to the bill. Do you expect that if this bill is passed, it will immediately become law? That is, it will get presidential assent?
By the grace of God, I believe the president will assent to the bill if it gets to him, because he's a believer of democracy, and I know he's working hard to ensure that you know, our election, you know, becomes more transparent, and so Nigerians have confidence in democracy as a whole. So I believe the president will assent to the bill.
And just like my colleague said, ahead of the 2027 general elections, you are the chairman of the Senate committee, of the Committee of Northern Governors, Northern Senators Forum yes. in the National Assembly. There seems to be a bit of, you know, whispers here and there about, you know, the North's feel to the present administration. Can you give us an insight into that? What is the pulse of the North?
Well, mostly I wouldn't say there's a pulse, but what I think is the policies of the government, some of the policies that have been taken have caused some hardship, I would say. And of course the government is doing something, you know, to ensure that, you know, such hardship, you know, is dealt with completely. It is normal in democracy. This is the first government that has taken very tough decisions, which were not taken before. And every government that comes, you know, they shy away from, you know, the challenges that, you know, the nation is facing. So Nigerians, for the first time, you know, are seeing a president who has taken very tough decisions, you know, to ensure that future generations do not suffer. So what I will say here is, you know, to call on Nigerians and to plead with them, you know, to give this president the opportunity to bring Nigeria back on track, and that is what he's doing. So it is important, because we that are doing whatever we are doing today to ensure Nigeria moves forward, we have to sacrifice, and that is the most important thing for Nigerians to do, so that our future generations will have a place. See what is happening in the world today. All countries are trying to lock up their borders, you know, in respect of immigration. And you see the president of the United States today even stopping certain, you know, foreign aids coming to Africa and other countries. So we have to look inward. We have to ensure we do, you know, things that will bring Nigeria back on track. And remember, African countries are looking up to Nigeria for leadership. And that is why this president is working 24/7, you know, to ensure that Nigeria gets back on track. So I would just plead with Nigerians to give the president an opportunity. These are hard decisions, and they have to be taken, and he has taken them. And you can see the results today. You know, the Naira is going down, the exchange rate. You can see the result in terms of even food prices. They are coming down. You know, so these policies are, you know, leaders are meant to take hard decisions. And this is what Mr. President is doing, and I think we should commend him for that.
Okay. There was a time that people see the North as a very strong political group. You lead a northern group also in the National Assembly. Would you say that the North still speaks with one voice as it used to? Because we've seen some persons going out and seem to be saying, look, we're speaking for the North. Do you think the North still speaks with one voice?
Well, no, politics is dynamic. You know, everybody has his interest. But when the time comes, the North will speak, just like it did in 2023, when the North rallied behind Mr. President. So when the time comes, of course, they will look at what he has done, and they will speak, I believe, with one voice. But of course, you always find opposition here and there. It's normal in democracy. But on the whole, I believe, with the performance of Mr. President, I think by the grace of God, the North will look at what he has done. It's the time that when something happens like this, results do not come immediately. It takes time, especially when a nation goes through what we have gone through. It takes time for you to see the benefits of what government is doing. But we thank God we are already seeing some of the benefits. So I believe when the time comes, Nigerians will look at that and they will be fair to Mr. President.
Okay. Now, let me also still stay on this particular issue. The history of the North speaking with one voice. If you look at the statistics today, they will say the North is one of the most underdeveloped parts of Nigeria when you talk about education, living standard and all that. Does it bother you as a Northerner that the years of speaking with one voice, how has that impacted on the development of the North?
Well, of course, it bothers me and it bothers Northerners, especially the elites and the politicians. But of course, the governors are doing their best to ensure that, these areas you are talking about, the sectors of education, the issue of poverty, are being dealt with. Now they have more money than before. And kudos must be given to Mr. President, for helping, through these policies to make more money available. And every state you go today, you see a lot of, developments in the areas of education and even in the security sector. I saw yesterday the governor of Borno State giving out over 150 security vehicles to the police. And I think about 240 houses built for them. So they are working hard, to ensure these areas, these sectors you are talking about, are being developed to ensure that even the Almajiris, their number have reduced now. A lot of them are now back, in school as a result of the policies of both federal and state governments. So it's a work in progress. Once you have a decline, it takes time, to deal with it.
All right, we've seen alignments and realignments, especially in the Senate chamber. We see that your R is growing. It has even generated a little spark in the chamber, but I would not dwell on that. I would like to know, does it signal that it seems your party is doing the right thing, or those that are shifting into your campaign just be looking for something to fuel, their political interests?
Well, we are doing well in the Senate as far as I'm concerned. And we are one body of senators. We have the president of the Senate, whom, we have confidence in. We are doing our best. So, of course, in politics, you will always find this dissenting voice. But so far, so good. Even those in opposition within the Senate, we are just one body.
All right. We must thank you so much for your time with us on the program. Senator Abdulaziz Yaradua, it was a pleasure talking.